Hello, everyone. You are listening to your Palm Beach Guide with the Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce. My name is Kiana Rivera, and I'm the Vice President of Membership here at the Chamber. Today, we have Joe Colucci and Paul Massey with Munyon's Paw-Paw. So a little bit about them and a little bit about Joe first is Joe is an industry veteran with over 20 years experience in the liquor industry. Prior to launching Munyon's, Joe was a divisional VP for Campari America, managing the largest markets in the country for one of the top premium spirit companies in the world. Prior to Campari, Joe is one of the original employees at Imperial Brands, Inc., the company responsible for launching Sobieski vodka in the United States, where he managed the Florida market. Sobieski became one of the most successful launches the U.S. spirits industry has seen. Joe began his career at Cruzian International, working under the Florida Distillers branch of the company, selling bulk alcohol, branded spirits, and wines throughout the industry. Joe is a graduate of Florida Atlantic University and was raised in New Jersey. And now we'll jump over to Paul Massey. Paul is a wine and spirits executive with 24 years experience in the alcohol beverage industry. Paul has expertise in several segments of the spirits industry and has proven record of building brands and leading teams. He currently holds the position of COO of Sophisticated Sand Spirits, representing Munyon's Paw-Paw and Fuzzy's Vodka. Prior to joining Fuzzy Spirits, Paul was the VP of National Accounts at Imperial Brands, importer of Sobieski Vodka and Marie Blizzard Liquors. As a founding member and the company's youngest VP, he helped successfully launch Sobieski Vodka in the U.S. market. In 2011, Sobieski sold 1 million cases, the fastest vodka to achieve this milestone in the United States. Paul was an integral part of this accomplishment, creating and developing a national accounts division, as well as introducing Sobieski to the military and travel retail outlets. Paul attended University of Massachusetts Amherst, where he played college lacrosse and received his MBA from University of Florida's Warrington College of Business. So welcome, guys. How's it going?
Happy to be here. Good morning.
Yes, thank you so much for being on here today. I am so pumped because this story is close to my heart. So when Paul talked about it, to me, just with everything Florida-based and bringing back the Florida history of Munyon's, and of course, everything else that you guys do, because it's more than just Munyon's, I couldn't wait to share your story on here. So tell me a little bit about Munyon's and really, your bio covered a lot of it, but you guys have many years of experience. So who wants to go first?
Yeah, we've been in the industry for 20 plus years each.
Yeah.
Started at Cruzian Rum, which was downtown West Palm Beach, and then Sobieski Vodka, which was literally our corporate headquarters across the street from where we're sitting right now.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, so we've been in the industry for, like I said, 20 plus years, always here in Palm Beach County, and we've always had we've always wanted to start our own brand.
Right.
And so Joe can sort of take you through the process and how this whole thing started.
Yes.
Yeah, so Munyon's Paw-Paw. So like Paul mentioned, we worked together for about a decade. Then we kind of went our separate ways in the industry. I went to Campari, and Paul was doing the Fuzzies branded thing too as well. So we stayed friends. We stayed in touch. We always had this nagging feeling, and we were always on the lookout for some brands to create as our own. So one day, right down the road here, so you got Singer Island, and it's got John D. MacArthur Beach State Park, the only state park in Palm Beach County. It's right here. And if you go there, you can rent kayaks, and the good folks over there will say, hey, you can paddle out to Munyon Island. So a lot of locals will have heard of Munyon Island, but they don't know the whole history. So I was there with the family. We were having a great day, a great beach day, and go in the visitor center, had paddled out to Munyon and see a little display that's got the silhouette of Dr. James Munyon and a glass case that's got this incredible display of old bottles. And it says Munyon's Paw-Paw. And it turns out there's a vignette, few paragraphs on Dr. James Munyon. He owned the island. And the reason why he was doing so well is because Munyon's Paw-Paw, his cure-all elixir, was selling millions of bottles. And saw the display, thought it was fascinating, said, man, there's a bottle of liquor from this area with a real history, a real authentic history, a story. There's something here. So I called Paul and I said, hey, man, you got to come take a look at this. So Paul can take it from here.
Yeah. So I headed over to MacArthur State Park, saw that same display, and it was like, okay, I'm intrigued as well. Right. Went on the internet and looked up Dr. James Munyon. There were a few local articles from years past on him, but very little information. So we reached out to the Historic Society of Palm Beach.
Yes, absolutely. They're great over there.
Incredible. And told them we were interested in Dr. James Munyon, got on the phone with the archivist over there. She pulled a bunch of information for us. So Joe and I went in there and spent a whole day researching Dr. James Munyon.
And I'm sure too, just at the Historical Society, when you go into their archives, it's amazing what they have available. And I'm sure, I mean, you can spend hours down there just digging and learning about everything Palm Beach and Palm Beach County.
We spent a whole day in there, and I don't think we went through everything, just like you said.
Right.
Yeah. And they're amazing folks, been great to work with. But one name kept popping up when we were there, and the gentleman's name was Ned Heindel. And we asked the archivist, who's this Ned Heindel that's donated a bunch of this information? And she said, I think he's a professor from somewhere up in New England. I'm not sure what his connection with the Munyon's brand is. So we looked him up on the internet. Found out he was the head of the chemistry department at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so call, email, he's not getting back to us. And literally after maybe a dozen phone calls, he picks up at the university one day.
Oh, finally.
Yes.
You're like, I'm just going to fly and come see you if you don't answer.
Yeah. Well, we ended up doing that, but I was speechless. And I finally said, Ned, I'm Paul Massey. I've been trying to get in touch with you. And he goes, oh, you're the guy that wants to know about Munyon. I said, yeah, I'm in the liquor business, and my partner and I are contemplating trying to bring this Munyon's Paw-Paw back to life. What's your connection? Because we see that you've donated a bunch of stuff to the Historic Society. And he goes, I've been researching the life of Dr. James Munyon for 50 years. I'm in the process of writing a book on him.
So it's his life's work, basically.
Yeah.
He spent this entire time researching
You're
this.
absolutely right. So like he was right out of college. He was out to dinner with a buddy of his that was a chemistry major like himself in college. And they were talking about all the homeopathic medicine men at the turn of the century. And his buddy said, if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, you have to look up the life of Dr. James Munyon. So we started in his 20s. I talked to him for over an hour on the phone. And then I said, hey, it would really be impactful if my partner and I headed up to Pennsylvania and met with you in person. So that we did. He wanted to meet in a pub and drink beers with us all afternoon.
Yeah.
That's honestly the best way to brainstorm, truthfully.
It really is. We have a great picture of the three of us there. But, one thing I said to Joe flying up there, I said, if he's been working on this book for 50 years, the chances of it ever being published are slim to none. So let's ask if he'll at least give us a transcript of the book. That he did without us even having to ask.
Oh my goodness.
But something that's really cool is we told him we had an unopened bottle. And from the early 1900s, 1903, 1904.
And how did you get that bottle?
So we've been for 6 years buying as much stuff as we can find on auction sites, eBay.
Okay, so that type of stuff. Okay.
Miracle of the internet.
Yes, tell you what, you can find anything out there.
Yeah, so we have about a dozen of the original bottles. We have one here with us today, but 3 of which have showed up with the cork and the liquid still in there.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So we extracted a sample, sent it up to him to have it analyzed, and he did publish the book. It was just published about 2 years ago, and this is pretty wild.
Let me see.
That's my neighbor extracting the sample in his book. And I'll let Joe tell you what we found in the original.
Yeah, so it was pretty amazing. He gave us this whole history of James Munyon. The guy was a Renaissance man. He was literally born, dirt poor. There was dirt floors in his house in Thompson, Connecticut, and it was a rags to riches, true American dream type of story. He was out there selling tinctures and tonics from a young age, 8, 9 years old, to neighbors to help put food on the table. And then he just kept that entrepreneurial spirit through his whole life. He started a theatrical agent. He was a songwriter. He wrote a few songs that were in contention to be the national anthem.
Oh, wow.
He had hotels. He had one here on the island, on Munyon Island. He had one up in Maine. So he had his hands in a lot of different things. Got into publishing, and he published tabloids, but also almanacs. He was sort of a pioneer in that industry as well.
He seemed to do it all, really, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, Renaissance man, had his hands in everything, constantly looking for a different angle to kind of make some money and reach out, his stretch in the world marketing wise. And where he really hit pay dirt was with Munyon's Homeopathic Remedy Company. And the crown jewel of that company was Munyon's Paw-Paw. So Paw-Paw is an old Florida word for papaya. And he was selling millions of bottles. It was amazing. In today's dollars, adjusted for inflation, at the peak of his business, which was in the late 19-teens, he was selling near $200 million annually.
Holy cow.
Very ubiquitous. It was all over North America. He had a nice presence in the UK. evidence that he traveled to Asia, so he probably was selling some bottles there. So quite an empire that he created. They say that Ned will quote in his book that he was more famous than the president.
Wow.
Always joke around, say he was a pop culture icon. He was like the Kardashian family.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
everybody knew about him. He was in all his articles. He had this famous saying, "There is hope," with his finger extended skyward. So that brings us to this great reveal. When we found out that Ned ran the analysis, he said, "Joe, Paul, I confirmed it's papaya," which, like I mentioned, Floridians were calling papaya Paw-Paw. He said there's alcohol in there that range 15 to 20%, like you mentioned. Some sugars, which probably made it a little bit more palatable. An ingredient called Nux vomica, which was a common homeopathic ingredient of the day. Whether it did anything or not, debatable, but it was in all of them, all his competition as well. And he said, but guys, I'll tell you why he was selling millions of bottles and he was doing so well with repeat customers. He had THC in his formula.
That'll do it.
So none in today's formula,
Yeah.
just to be clear. But back in the day, THC. And the crazy thing is that he was prescribing this not only to adults, but anyone 5 years old and up. So
Wow.
parents were probably saying, my kid slept like an angel last night.
Yeah.
So
That's
we'll
why.
get another bottle of this. So that's how he hit those sales numbers and how he became as famous as he was.
Wow. That's amazing. So what we'll do real quick, you're listening to your Palm Beach Guide with the Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce. And now that we've learned a little bit more about the history of Munyon's, kind of walk me through the process of how you guys recreated this brand almost that people are identifying with today.
Sure, I can
Either
start us
one.
off. Okay. So we saw every great spirits brand has an incredible backstory to it. And we think the one of Dr. James Munyon is second to none. So we had the story. We knew what the original formula was. We wanted to be in that medicinal type flavor profile, which is either an aperitif or digestif, bittersweet liqueurs. They typically come out of Europe. They were used medicinally in the early 1900s. Now they're used in all different types of craft cocktails here domestically and are really exploding in the U.S. market. So we had in our head, so this is what we want the flavor profile to look like. We knew that Dr. Munyon, when he owned Munyon Island, was growing hibiscus, orange, papaya, and
so
grapefruit.
Floral notes almost.
So we wanted all that in today's recipe, which they are. So we went to all these flavor houses throughout the country, and we wanted to also be all natural. Our competition uses artificial colors, dyes.
Right.
We wanted it to be 100% all natural. So we went to a bunch of flavor houses. Nobody could come up with a profile that we were happy with. And that was the most challenging part, right? We had
to find that taste.
Yeah, we had in our head.
This is it.
Yeah, and we went through what, Joe, about 100 different samples?
Easily.
Holy cow.
Still have some in the garage, I think.
You're like, I don't know where these are.
So to tie it into Palm Beach County a little more, I was working out at a local gym, and there's a gentleman there that runs manufactures craft distilling equipment.
Oh, wow.
It's called Still Dragon, and I saw him at the gym one day. I said, hey, can I take you to lunch? Took him to lunch here locally, told him we had this idea for our brand, but we couldn't get anyone to match the flavor profile we were after. And he said, hey, one of the best craft distillers in the whole country is out of Miami.
Oh, wow.
He goes, he typically doesn't do projects besides his own. He has like a cult-like following with all the bars and restaurants down there.
Right.
But at least I can connect you and Joe with him, and you guys can take him to lunch and pick his brain.
And see what happens.
Yeah.
You never know.
So that we did, what, Joe, about 3 years ago now? 2.5, 3 years ago, we took him to lunch.
COVID, it's such a time warp. It was a while back.
So we took him to lunch, told him our story. He goes, I'm doing this project for you. He goes, under one condition. He goes, you cannot reveal that I've done this for you, as I typically don't do anything besides for my own brand. So we said, no problem. So the first samples we received from him were light years ahead of anything we had tasted that far.
You're like, finally.
Yeah. We're on to something.
Working with a professional here.
Yeah, exactly.
And we still went back and forth for 6 months with him before we settled on today's formulation. But he'll tell you today, he lets us, his name's Fernando Plata, and it's Big Cypress Distillery.
Yeah, plug it right there. Say it again.
Yeah, Fernando Plata. He's a fascinating individual, 82nd Airborne, self-taught engineer, and then got into craft distilling. But he's so proud of what he produced here. He goes,
That's
you guys can
amazing.
plug my name anywhere you want. I'm proud of what I've produced here. So, so Joe can sort of take you through a little bit more of what's in the bottle today. And
yeah, it was amazing, like Paul said. So when we finally got with Fernando, as opposed to these major companies where they just kind of throw something in the bottle. You'd have a sample 48 hours later, and you're like, how much thought could they have put into this? So we would go down there and meet with him, and it was amazing, Kiana, just sitting across a table similar to this, and he would have all these bottles lined up, and he'd have an eyedropper, and he'd have a couple samples that he pre-prepared for us, and he'd say, all right, taste them. So you'd taste it, and Paul would say, hey, I'm not getting the mouthfeel that I want, and he'd say, okay, well, I can add a little bit of this, this, and this, and I'd say the bitter note isn't there, or it's too sweet, and he'd say, okay, well, that would be, maybe we'll put a little more gentian root in, or so literally eyedroppers of these tinctures that he created, so we knew we were actually getting a craft product and really nice. And like Paul mentioned, and when we were at the Historical Society, which those guys have been great, the John D. MacArthur Beach State Park folks, the Historical Society folks are just excellent and incredible resources and just good people. We found these postcards, like Paul mentioned. So we knew what they were growing on the island because these postcards were indicative of that. So we told Fernando, hey, we want these things in there, and he included them. So we finally settled on a formula, and we have this cool thing where if you peel back the back label, you can see all the ingredients that we include in the bottle, which nobody else is doing. So a lot of times these aperitifs or digestives, they'll say, hey, it's a closely guarded secret, whether it is or not, I mean, they don't tell you what's in there. So, so we actually did that, and that's how we came up with this formula, how we kind of went back and forth. And so what we have now is 20% alcohol, just to be very, stay in that range that was originally there for Dr. Munyon. Back in the day, the government was a little bit less strict, and you could have 15% one day and 20% the next, but ours is 20%. 14 all-natural ingredients that we list on the back label. It's an aperitif, so what you get on the front end is sweet, citrusy. We're really going to be reminiscent of a Florida orange grove. So you have the Florida orange grove on the front end. On the back end, you have lingering bitter notes that comes from a gentian, anise, allspice. So it really, over your palate, kind of develops. Incredibly versatile. Every great cocktail has a spirits base, a sweet, and a bitter profile, all balanced nicely. We balance all that in the bottle, so it mixes great. You could do it in an old fashioned. You could do it in a spritz. We do the Palm Beach spritz, which is Munyon's, Fever Tree Prosecco, our Fever Tree Grapefruit and Prosecco. Fantastic, great summer drink. If you're looking for a summer cocktail, I highly recommend it.
It's so good. And I want to go back to Palm Beach Spritz, but real quick, you're listening to Your Palm Beach Guide with the Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce, and we're here with Joe Colucci and Paul Massey of Munyon's Paw-Paw. And to go back to Palm Beach Spritz, so I remember you were saying, I need this cocktail in every single restaurant, whether it's on Palm Beach or whether it's in Palm Beach County, it doesn't matter. I want it in every single restaurant. So I go to one of my favorite restaurants, right? And I'm like, hi, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And luckily I know the manager's there. So when you're in the industry, you just kind of know everybody.
Sure.
So I go, hey, do you have a Palm Beach Spritz? And he's like, no, what is that? I was like, well, let me tell you. Let me tell you about this Palm Beach Spritz. I liked you from the moment I met
you. Get her a business card.
Oh, yeah. So we did. I told him a really quick summary of your guys' story. I said, this is who you need to talk to. You need to make this happen. Work it up the chain if you need to, but this is where it's going to be at. So I just want to know, I'm a huge advocate of your Palm Beach Spritz and everything about this brand. I love it. And I think for next steps, especially, you guys have really been involved in the nonprofit world now for a long time with events. And so tell me a little bit about this season. How has that looked for you?
Busy.
I know you guys are always doing something, which is great.
You know? The biggest spirits brand Joe and I have seen in our careers is Tito's Vodka. And what they did right out of the gates is they donated to every charity that came their way. So we're doing our best to do that, specifically here in Palm Beach County. And it's just great exposure for us. It helps some great causes here locally as well. And we're happy to do that. It's a win-win for us and the charity. I think the first events we did were with Place of Hope, right, Joe? And we've gone from there.
Yeah, Quantum House, Place of Hope, Friends of Jupiter Beach. And I apologize if I'm missing some, but it's great.
There's
and then
so many.
You just wind up meeting the people, and they become friends. And like Paul mentioned, it becomes a cause that you want to be associated with. And Friends of Jupiter Beach, I've been taking my dogs to the beach for 20 years, and so to be a part of that, and then Quantum House, everybody's had something where they've had to go to the spend some time at the hospital at some point in their life, and what they do for all the patients there and the families is just, it's heart-wrenching. So it's great. It's great to be a part of it. And then obviously the nonprofits like the Friends of MacArthur Beach and the Historical Society.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're instrumental in what we've done. So it's just something that we're proud and happy to do. And
well, I think too, you guys have really just hit the pavement this year. I mean, I have seen it just from observing all of the work you've done, and you don't have a large team behind you.
You're pretty much looking at it.
Yes, yeah.
And it's you'll either see me, Paul, Jane, his wife, Erin, my wife, or pretty much that's it around here.
Shout out to Jane and Erin over here, okay? Because they were working a couple events that we had at the boat show one time, and then I know they help with social media. So amazing. Just I talked to Erin the other when we were at the boat show, and I was just saying, I was like, social media is hard, and if you don't know how to do it, but most of the time you really just kind of figure it out. You figure it out as you go. Yep. So kudos to you and your amazing wives for helping you on this journey, because I think this is awesome.
You know, it's funny that social media, like we mentioned, Paul and I, you work in the industry for a long time, but we do work in a dynamic industry. So anybody who tells you that they really have a grasp on it, they're not in there, because it's changed so much.
Right.
And we could look at the route to market, the relationships with the distributor. Just the climate has changed drastically in 20 years. What the consumers like and everything along those lines. But you at least know that, hey, here's some of the trends and here's some of the things, the levers to pull. Social media was something that Paul and I just did not know at all. And it's in companies that we worked for, somebody else really did it.
Right.
So
yeah.
It's
there's always a dedicated person for this role. So that's why to see you guys be so active on it, because you need that. Like, you guys are out in the field, and then your other crew is behind the scenes making sure that it gets out there on a worldly perspective. And that's where it's really great to see that partnership, because you are working together. And I think too, on top of that, just where your focus is on growing this market. And I mean, Floridians they love their history. We love our history. It's very important to us to be represented through that. And this brand and what you guys are representing for all Floridians is really incredible.
Well, thanks for saying that. Yeah, we're in 6 states total, but our focus is Florida. Right. We need to own, in Palm Beach County specifically, we really need to own our backyard, make sure we get it right here, and then continue to expand outside of Florida. But this is priority number 1 for us.
Well, so what are the 6 states? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so in the Southeast, we've got Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. And Paul was pretty adamant about this. First, get in our backyard, but also, hey, if you need to put out a fire, you need to be somewhere you could get to in 24 hours. So we did the Southeast, but we reached out to Kentucky, which is a short flight, but right off the bat, because Munyon's pairs so well with bourbon. If you do 2 parts bourbon, pick your favorite bourbon. Paul and I like to go a little bit like 100 proof or less, not that crazy higher proof stuff, but 2 parts bourbon, 1.5 parts Munyons, put it on the rocks, put a nice cocktail cherry in there. It's great. And so we said, hey, if there's a connection with bourbon, let's go to Kentucky. We both had, some friends there from the industry, from our past lives. And so we're in Kentucky, Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio up in that region.
Amazing. Yeah. That's great.
And we have one salesperson that helps us out in that region. So we're going to both be on the plane up there next week, but we're not having to be up there all the time.
No, that's amazing. And that's great that you continue to expand. So you're focused still backyard Florida, but ultimately, like, this needs to be national again, like Dr. Munyon.
That's the ultimate goal. And, hopefully, I mean, the challenge is having the bandwidth to support additional markets. But, one thing that we're seeing is we've had a lot of hotel chains and places along those lines saying, hey, we love it, but can you be in all of our markets? So that's the juggling act.
That's interesting.
How quickly do you expand?
Okay.
Yeah, we just got one of those phone calls this week.
Yeah, so
that's a good problem to have.
I think so.
Yeah, that's a good problem.
Yeah, we are spread thin, like you mentioned. So we're right now, I think we've got our hands full.
Oh yeah. So tell our listeners and tell people, how can our Florida market support you best? How can we do that?
Just like what you're doing.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Well, and of course, purchase it. Buy bottles of Munyons.
Yeah, buy Munyons, but ask for it everywhere you go as well. Right. I mean, the biggest challenge you have in this industry is going into a bar, restaurant, retail account and saying, hey, here's our story, here's our brand.
Right.
Well, no one's asked for it.
Yeah.
So if people are asking for it, it certainly supports our cause. So yeah, go out there. We're in Total Wines throughout the state.
good.
We're in 80 ABC wine and spirits accounts, and a bunch of the independents around here as well carry us and support us.
Hampton's right on the island.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of
They're chamber
locations.
members. Shout out Hamptons.
All right, there you go.
See over
Yeah.
there?
Something
Great
else that
account.
Dr. Munyon did that was really cool back in the day. In the early 1900s, he had his Munyon Hope Association. So
okay.
you could become a member each year.
Oh, yes. Tell me about this. I remember. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, he'd give you a lapel pin that said "There is hope," and then he'd send you his guide to health, which we have in the box right here
amazing.
as well. So if you go on our website and you join the Munyon Hope Association, there's no cost to join, but we send you a postcard with what Munyon Lion looked like when he had his hotel on it. And we send you a replica of the original There Is Hope pin as well.
Wow.
So check out our website, follow us on all the social media.
Absolutely. Social media channels. And
yeah.
I got you.
I told you we don't know what we're doing.
No,
social.
that's okay. I
Where's
knew
the
what you
ways
meant.
when we need them?
Well, I think too, that's just an incredible story. And please, for everyone who's listening, I have personal experience with this brand and I love it. So please go get your Munyons, make the drinks. Like if you go out a lot to restaurants as I do, ask for the Palm Beach Spritz, just ask. And it never hurts to ask. And, they say, oh, I don't have it. Well, let me tell you about it.
Oh, that's
people
the
like to
best.
talk. And if you're in the industry, shout out to all my bar people. Please start poking your general managers about this brand. So I think it'd be great. Again, you're listening to your Palm Beach Guide with the Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce. And today we were joined by Joe Colucci and Paul Massey of Munyon's Paw-Paw. So thank you guys for being here.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for having us, Kiana.